Since childhood, Jin-goo was seen as Korea's prodigy boy, talented, polite, and too perfect to be real. But suddenly he disappeared. No new dramas, no interviews, no sign of public life. What happened to the actor who seemed to have his future guaranteed? Was it the fame, the pressure, or some controversy that ended his career? Today, I'm going to tell you why we don't hear about Jin-goo anymore. From very early on, Jin-goo seemed to carry a different destiny. While other children were learning to deal with school and shyness, he was already facing cameras, scripts, and demanding directors. At just 8 years old, he debuted on screens and, in a short time, became the type of actor who made adults forget they were watching a child. Koreans nicknamed him the nation's son, an expression reserved only for those who managed to awaken collective, almost familial affection. He grew up before the public. Each drama, each role, each tear he shed on screen was a piece of his own childhood being delivered to Korea. When he starred in Moon Embracing the Sun, still a teenager, Jin-goo was no longer just a promising child actor. He was a promise for the future of Korean cinema and television. Time passed and the charm continued. In Hotel Del Luna in 2019, acting alongside IU, he definitively consolidated his reputation. It was there that the public realized that the prodigy boy had become a man capable of carrying a big story on his shoulders. His presence always calm, controlled, but loaded with emotion. Jin-goo had something rare, an aura of sincerity that made any character seem real. Then came Beyond Evil, a dark drama that showed a new facet. That of the mature actor, willing to dive into complex and psychological roles. Critics praised him and awards confirmed it. Korea saw him as the natural heir of great names, the next Lee Byung-hun, the new Hyun Bin, perhaps even the successor to Gong Yoo. But what few noticed was that, along with the talent, an almost impossible expectation to sustain was also growing. From early on, he was placed on a pedestal, and when the public puts someone up there, any misstep can seem like a fall. Since childhood, he was called a genius of acting, a pure face, a calm voice, an image that seemed untouchable, until time passed, and Korea began to wonder, where is Jin-goo now? The truth is that Jin-goo had everything: talent, beauty, charisma, and, perhaps the rarest, an impeccable reputation. He was the type of actor who didn't get involved in scandals, who respected traditions, and who seemed to live only to act. But time proved that being too perfect can also be dangerous. After Hotel Del Luna, the public expected something grand, a project that would confirm what everyone was already saying, that Jin-goo was the natural successor of the great protagonists. But that didn't happen. The dramas that came after, although competent, didn't impact the public. The plots were lukewarm, the ratings average, and his name began to appear less in headlines. Little by little, that star shine began to give way to an uncomfortable silence. The Korean industry is cruel to those who slow down. There, it's not enough to be good. You need to be constant, visible, desired. And Jin-goo, perhaps from exhaustion, perhaps from strategy, began to distance himself. In 2023, a drastic drop in his public presence was already noticeable. Few interviews, rare appearances at events, and no project that sparked excitement. When 2024 arrived, fans began to wonder, where is he? This sudden disappearance opened space for speculation. Some talked about burnout, others about a personal crisis. There were those who said he was being boycotted by major broadcasters, that he refused too many roles and created friction with producers. Nothing was confirmed, but in a country obsessed with reputation, the simple fact of not appearing is, in itself, reason for distrust. The pressure to maintain the image of model actor certainly transformed into an invisible prison. Everything Jin-goo did was analyzed under a magnifying glass. The haircut, the tone of voice, the way he behaved behind the scenes. Every gesture needed to confirm that he was still the same disciplined and pure young man that the public idealized. But time passes, and idols grow up. The prodigy boy became a man, and the public that loved him for his innocence seemed not to know how to deal with his maturity. Jin-goo was always reserved, but the silence that came after 2022 began to seem strange even to the most faithful fans. He no longer interacted on social media, gave no signs of new projects, didn't let himself be seen. What was previously interpreted as humility now sounded like distance. And when an artist disappears, the public doesn't wait, it replaces. As we've been talking since the beginning of this video, for years, Jin-goo built one of the cleanest images in Korean entertainment. He was the actor who never made mistakes, never got involved in rumors, never reacted impulsively. That's why, when the scandal of July 2025 broke out, the shock was immediate. It all started banally. Internet users noticed that Jin-goo's official Instagram profile was following an explicit adult content account. In a few minutes, his name rose to the top of trending topics. Memes, theories, and jokes began to spread. What could have been just a technical error became a national scandal, and we know well how South Korea works in these moments. The actor's agency tried to act quickly, releasing an official statement comment saying that the follow had been done by mistake by a social media team employee, not by the actor himself. But the public, suspicious, didn't buy the explanation. After all, it was Jin-goo's personal profile, and for many, there was no way to justify that. The situation worsened when fans began comparing screenshots, showing that the account had remained followed for several hours before being removed. Ironic comments took over social media, and the actor, known for his pure and reserved image, became a target of mockery. The shock wasn't just about the act itself, but about the contrast between the nation's son, the actor with the purest image in the industry, and the error considered inappropriate for someone like him. In Korea, image culture is taken to extremes. A simple digital action can determine the fate of a career. And for Jin-goo, who always lived under the expectation of perfection, that click was enough to break the spell. He lost thousands of followers, brands began to distance themselves, and programs that planned to invite him canceled appearances without notice. The agency's silence after the first statement only increased the feeling of guilt. No interviews, no attempt to humanize the situation. And when the public doesn't receive answers, it creates its own theories. Some faithful fans tried to defend him, but the narrative was already out of control. The actor, who always represented control, elegance, and prudence, became the involuntary protagonist of one of the biggest memes of the year. The irony is that the mistake didn't involve crime, betrayal, or any serious behavior. It was just an accidental follow. But in the Korean industry, where moralism still dominates, the repercussion was disproportionate. In a few hours, a meaningless gesture destroyed years of building a perfect image. After that, Jin-goo completely disappeared from social media. No new posts, no statements. It was as if he had decided to disappear along with the controversy, hoping that time would erase the mistake. But the damage was already done. After the controversy of the inappropriate follow, Jin-goo's name was surrounded by silence. He didn't give interviews, didn't appear on programs, and didn't update social media either. And as usually happens in Korea, when the public doesn't find answers, it starts to fill in the gaps. If his career seemed stalled, all that remained was to speculate about his personal life. And that's when old rumors began to resurface. Some old, others completely new, about the actor's possible relationships. Jin-goo was always seen as someone reserved, almost inaccessible. For years, reporters tried to find out who he was involved with off the sets, but never found anything concrete. Since adolescence, he seemed determined to keep his personal life out of the spotlight. Still, this didn't prevent public curiosity. The Korean public loves to turn on-screen chemistry into evidence of romance. And with an actor who rarely shows emotions off camera, any gesture becomes a clue. The first big rumor emerged with Kim So-hyun, his partner in Missing You and later in Orange Marmalade. The harmony between the two was so natural that the public swore there was something real. They grew up together in the public eye, and this fed the narrative of friendship that became love, but both always denied it, maintaining discretion. Years later, with Hotel del Luna, IU's name entered the list. The chemistry between the protagonists was intense enough to generate headlines. Fans compared behind-the-scenes moments, looks, laughs, but once again, nothing was confirmed. IU is one of the most watched artists in Korea, and any involvement with her tends to be amplified to the extreme, something that Jin-goo, always careful with his image, would avoid at all costs. Other names came over time: Moon Ga-young, Kim Yoo-jung, and even actresses he worked with briefly in commercials or special appearances. In each new production, a new theory emerged. But the truth is, there was never even a photo, a confirmation, or a concrete indication. In interviews, Jin-goo always treated the subject with respect, but with an almost sad honesty. He said he didn't know how to balance love and career, and that focusing on proving himself as an actor from a young age made him give up many personal experiences. Dating is difficult when you never have time to just be yourself, he once said. This statement ended up reinforcing the image of a disciplined but lonely man, and the public began to see this as part of his identity. Unlike other actors of his generation, who are more open, charismatic, and active on social media, Jin-goo remained distant. He rarely appears at parties, avoids variety shows, and practically doesn't interact with fans outside of official events. For some, this behavior shows focus and maturity. For others, it's a sign of isolation, and perhaps both are right, because in the end, Jin-goo never needed romantic scandals to be a topic. Silence was enough, and this silence, which previously made him admired, now seems to be the main reason why the public no longer knows who he really is. And you? What do you think really happened? Was he wronged, or did he just get tired of fame? Tell me here in the comments. I want to know your opinion about Jin-goo's disappearance.